Welcome everybody to For Wild Places' 6th Trail Chat. My name's Will. I'm based in Port Kembla on Dharawal land, which is the south coast of New South Wales. And the first thing I want to do on this trail chat is acknowledge the traditional owners of this land and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. For Wild Places is an activist running organisation. We seek to not only run in, but also organise events and build culture to protect the wild places that we love to run in. So thanks so much for joining us, everyone, on today's chat. Today, we are stoked to have as our special guest, ultra runner, mountain runner, coach, economist, Team USA legend. I'm sure I've forgotten a bunch of other things, but welcome, Michelle Merlis. How are you, Michelle?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on. This is such a cool format to do an interview with guests here, and I can't wait to chat and answer everyone's questions.
Awesome. Look, I don't know about you other guys, but I follow Michelle on Strava, and actually Michelle mentioned before as well. She's, I love the photos. There's also some scary videos of tarantulas if you want to get into that kind of thing. But the runs look super amazing. I'm always really jealous. So Flagstaff, is it Coconino National Forest?
Yeah, Coconino. It's Coconino County, so a lot of things around here have the name Coconino.
Coconino, awesome. So, because you're a New Yorker, Michelle, I just wanted to check in. Are you now living over in Arizona, or or are you just training over there? Like what have you been up to?
Yeah, what's happening with
what's happening?
Great question. So yes, I am actually based in Albany, New York, which is about 3 hours north of New York City, for reference. And that is where I mostly live. But ahead of the World Championships in Thailand, I wanted a unique training experience and had a couple of options of places to go to train. I was looking for something with altitude, with really good trail access, looking for mountains that were a little bit bigger, just based on the profile of the race that I'll be doing in Thailand. And I've been to Flagstaff a couple of other times for training trips. And so kind of made this my pick. And I've been here for 4 weeks now. I have a couple of days left, actually, and then I head back to New York for a week before I go to Thailand. So I am just out here training. It's been really fantastic.
Awesome. So you're obviously not working. You've taken time off work.
Yeah, that's the other thing I'm really fortunate to have on my side is that I kind of took a little bit of a risk with my employer and asked for some time off to train and then do this race in Thailand and then be on vacation in Thailand afterwards. So I am currently on 10 weeks of leave from my job, which I will go back to when I'm finished with the race in the middle of November. But as you mentioned in the intro, I am an economist, and I do have a job that is outside of running. Yeah, just not right now.
Yeah. Actually, I'd love to come back to Thailand a bit later, but so what's your training plan looking like? Because your event, it will be a 40K event, yeah?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. So how are you approaching training? What's the build up? What are the targets? What are the milestones?
Yeah, so I actually just had my peak week last week. This week will still be a bit of a bigger week. What that looks like, I usually run 6 days a week, take rest days on Mondays. It's a pretty standard thing for the people who work with the person I'm coached by. We usually rest on Mondays, and then the rest of the week is some play and some hard work. So for that peak week, usually have 1 or 2 speed sessions per week. Out here, most of those sessions have been hill workouts. So I had a pretty burly hill workout last Tuesday, and then Thursday did kind of an uphill tempo for about half of my run. And then just long runs on the weekend, trying to get in some vert. I've been trying to train a bit specific to the race. So the race in Thailand is pretty much unlike any race I've ever run before at that distance. So in New York and the other races that I've run around the US, pretty much they will go up and down and up and down, and you have some climbs, but the race there, that 40K, has some really substantial climbs, like 5K climbs with several thousand feet. I should have looked up the meters conversion. Sorry.
Like divide by 3 or something, is that right?
Yeah. So pretty sustained. And I've never done anything like that in training. So I've been doing a lot of that out here. So a lot of my runs, I might cover, let's see, Ks, 25K in a run. And it will be 1 uphill and 1 downhill. And that's part of the reason why I came out here to Flagstaff, is because they have peaks that are big enough to do that. One of the great places to do that is the Grand Canyon, which kind of in reverse, where you actually run downhill for several thousand feet before coming back up. But I got to do that last Saturday, and that was really special. So just a lot of running on trails with incline and decline, some steep hiking sections. But in general, I've been doing higher mileage than I'm used to, not quite as much vertical gain as I've done in the past. I think the East Coast gives you a lot of vertical, where you will do this, everything on the East Coast just is straight uphill, straight downhill, straight uphill. If anyone's ever run on the East Coast of the US before, it's pretty brutal. It's really rocky, really gnarly terrain. Out here, everything's a bit more runnable. So it's been a pretty unique stimulus for me. It's training that I've really never done before. So I'm pretty excited to see where that takes me in the upcoming race, and then just even for like my future running, to do something new. I think it's just adding to the toolkit, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah, awesome. But you'd be feeling pretty good, wouldn't you? Like elevation, vertical, that's a strength of yours. Like, you'd be feeling pretty confident. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think that my strength is really running down steep terrain. I've always struggled a bit more with the uphill running, especially anything when it's not running and it turns more to hiking. So anything that's really steep, that's definitely my trail weakness. And I've been working really hard to address that. It's just, perhaps some of you have experienced this before, that we don't necessarily like to do the things that we're bad at or that are more painful, so we avoid them. And I definitely have done a lot of avoiding steep uphills, but I will take a downhill any day. So, yeah.
Nice. I should just say I broke my own rule about not talking about Thailand and training, because it's very interesting. But just in case folks weren't aware, so Michelle won the Breakneck Point Trail Marathon earlier in the year to qualify to represent the US at the World Mountain and Trail Running Championships, the 40K event coming up in Thailand. That's next month, yeah?
Yes, it is in 2.5 weeks, right at the beginning of the month. Yeah.
2.5 weeks. Awesome. Hey, are you thinking about, like, I've been to Thailand once, but not in a running capacity. I was just holidaying. But are you worried about like climate, humidity, anything like that?
Yeah, definitely. I think I know what I'm getting into. So the East Coast of the US, again, New York, where I live, is a humid climate in the summer. So we have that humidity, probably not as extreme as it can be in Thailand, where some of the days I've looked at the weather and it just says like 99% humidity. Yeah. It's not raining. So I am ready for what's coming. I think that running in humidity is really challenging. And of course, I'm out here training in the desert with absolutely no humidity. But part of my training outside of running, I'm doing a lot of other things. So strength training, a lot of mobility work, plyos, and I'm also sitting in a sauna 4 to 5 times a week. So I'll do my run and then I'll hit a really hot sauna for 15 to 20 minutes. And I'm just going to hope I've done the best I can to be prepared for that heat and humidity. But it will be a factor, and it'll be a factor for everybody. I don't know anyone who really runs well in humidity. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, massive congrats on qualifying. That's pretty amazing.
Thank you. Yes, I still am not sure it's real. So I guess I'll feel like it's real when I'm on the start line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And look, I can't promise that we'll be going for Team USA, but we'll definitely be going for you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, you have your own country to cheer for over there. I understand that.
Yeah, look, I did have a few other questions about Thailand, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I did want to I found out that you're a basketballer, and that got me very excited because my first sport was basketball as well. And they're just, I feel like you couldn't get two more different sports. Like you got team sport, individual sport, like the movements are really different. The surfaces are obviously really different. I just wanted to ask you, what made you make the switch from a basketballer to a runner?
Yeah, I think the end of basketball for kind of the typical experience, right? You can play basketball in middle school, high school, college, and then after college, maybe you find a league to play in, but really the organized portion of it is over. So when I graduated from college, I played a little bit in college, I didn't play on our varsity team, but I played on our JV team and I did intramurals and stuff like that, just because I loved it so much. And when I graduated and then I went straight from undergrad to graduate school, I had this sensation of like, well, what do I do now? I've always been really active. I played basketball for a really long time. I think from about the time I was in 4th or 5th grade through college. And I did run 2 years of track in high school, but to be honest, I don't remember running much. I remember spending a lot of time hanging out with my friends on the side of the track, trying to avoid running. But yeah, it worked out. I think that running was a really accessible thing to do while I was in graduate school. It provided that stress relief. It provided the physical activity. And I just did it very casually. Actually, when I was in undergrad, one of the guys that I had dated, he was out of school and all of his friends were runners. And that's how they met each other, was through a running group. And so he really is the one who like instilled that idea that you can make friends in your adult life by running. You just show up at a track and you run with them. And that changed my life because when I went to graduate school, that's what I met people through running. When I moved to Albany, where I live now, that's how I met like 90% of my friends. It's how I met my husband. So it just was, I don't know, it just fell into place, I guess. I was very casual at first. And then really when I moved to New York a couple of years later and joined it's called the Albany Running Exchange, which is the running club that my husband started when he was in college. That's when I became a little bit more serious and I started running year round. That was the next step. But you're right, from basketball to running, it doesn't necessarily make sense. But I think kind of going back through my childhood, I spent a lot of time hiking with my parents and my brother. We grew up in the Catskill Mountains, they're very small mountains in the kind of a little bit south of Albany in New York. So I was really comfortable being outdoors and being on trails. And I always loved the running aspect of basketball. I was always the fastest person when we were sprinting or when we had to do a warm up before practice. Like I lived for the running. I even think I told my coach when I graduated from high school, you should make the players run more. So it was always there. It just took a little while for me to really get into it.
Wow, but you probably weren't the most popular teammate.
No, people didn't love that. No, not at all.
It's funny. I think all of the defensive drills you would have done, like side to side, would like strong quads are obviously going to help you on the downhill run. So that there's also some positives there.
Yeah, kind of thinking about, the movements are really different. In some ways, that's been really helpful, like what you just mentioned, that side to side, that lateral movement. Knock on wood, I've really never had injuries with running. And I think part of that is because I played a very dynamic sport that involved a lot of side to side movement. It involved a lot of leg strength, jumping. Before I played basketball, I actually was a dancer. So I guess that was the first thing that I really did. And I think that too was really formative in that I built really strong feet, really strong legs. I've always had really strong legs. My arms might be little, my dad calls them my spaghetti arms because they're just tiny, but you don't need arms to run. So yeah, I think that those experiences of really not being a runner helped me be the runner that I am. And the quad strength is so huge for the downhill running. So I feel like I have to really try to shred my quads because they are really strong. And I am really thankful for the experiences I had in other sports to give me these different types of skills that you might not necessarily develop if you start running at a very early age. So yeah, I think everything's come together. And I should mention, there are some things that are maybe not so helpful about having been a basketball player when it comes to my running, which is that I have a tendency to run up instead of out. So I spend a lot of energy going upward as opposed to forward, but I'm working on that. I'm trying to become a more efficient runner in the forward direction.
Yeah, I have horrible form. I'm really bouncy because I spent my
You
whole
bouncy?
trying to jump high. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm a casual runner, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, if you hit elite, I'm just going doing and,
Yeah.
and wasting all this energy.
It's just in you. You gotta just jumping all the time.
It's fun.
Yeah.
So hey, Michelle, in normal time, so you're an economist and you work for the power grid in Albany, yeah? I know you're a sponsored athlete now, but yeah, I was going to ask, are you still? I read somewhere that you're working full time. Do you still work full time? And if you are, in normal times, how do you juggle that with training and events?
Yeah, so I do work full time. My transition to working full time is I don't know, it's kind of interesting. So I had been in a PhD program for economics. I actually really wanted to be a demographer. I was really interested in climate refugees and the impact of climate on migration, human migration. So I had been in that program, but it wasn't really working out. It wasn't a really good fit for me. It was thousands of miles from my husband. So I actually ended up leaving the program at the end of 2018. And I thought, well, I'm going to focus on my running. So that's when I transitioned to running and coaching full time. And that was great. It was the first time in my life where I was very fortunate because of the work that my husband does, that I was able to do that, kind of go all in on my own running and my coaching business. But then the pandemic happened, as you are all aware. So my husband puts on running races and works for other events, and pretty much overnight, all of his business just vanished. So in March of 2020, I realized pretty much in about 2 days that I needed to find a job. And so my background is in economics. I have a master's in agricultural economics. And as I like to tell people, half of a PhD, which is not really true because they don't count that. But the organization that manages New York State's power grid is actually located in the city where we live. And I was familiar with them through my graduate studies. And it just happened that at that time, they were hiring 3 economists. Somewhat suspicious when you're hiring a handful of economists at the same time, but it was just very, yeah, you're like, why did all of your economists leave? But it was just coincidence. The people that they had working there had, one of them, their partner had moved, so they moved, and they were just kind of it wasn't like anything was fundamentally wrong with the organization. So that was, in 2020, I started that job, and I have been working there full time since. And to answer your question, so 2020, I would say actually felt really smooth. I thought the transition to working full time, maintaining my training load, and maintaining all of my coaching clients was going to be really challenging. And there were definitely some really challenging days. But I think the position that I'm in with my job, there was a lot of learning. So that first year was a little bit more flexible. I was learning a lot. I wasn't necessarily like leading any projects or any really big initiatives. And so I kind of got to just sit back a little bit, not be super stressed about work, which was helpful. I was also working from home, which made things a lot easier to just go out for a run at lunch, or, get in a run and then hop on a call and not have to worry about being really presentable. So that was really helpful. There were a lot of really tough days though. And I think that became very clear in 2021. 2021 honestly was, it was a bit of a challenging year for me. I struggled a lot with balancing all 3 of those things. I did make the decision to taper off my coaching business. So throughout the year, I worked with all of the athletes that I'd had. And I pretty much had a full-time coaching load too. I had about 20 athletes.
Wow.
So it felt like I was working 2 full-time jobs and trying to be a top runner. So it was a tough year, I would say. I went from 2020 feeling like my running was at its best. I also felt like really guilty because compared to a lot of the world, I'd had like a really good year. I landed a really good job. My running was going really well. My husband and I decided we were going to build a house. So I had a lot of guilt about how good that year felt in a year that felt so bad for so many people. But I got my bad year last year. So I guess I made up for it a little bit. But ending the coaching business and then finding some more flexibility with my job was really key. My supervisor has been really supportive. They allowed me to have a bit more of a flexible schedule. So actually I can work different hours, as long as I get my work done, I'm working my hours every week. So that's been really nice. Like Wednesday mornings, usually the morning I do a strength workout and I do a speed session. So I usually don't start work until later in the day on Wednesday. And that was just a huge relief. So I've had a lot of support in making it work. I think I still struggle sometimes with not putting so much pressure on myself on both sides, because I do really want to be a really good runner and to compete at the highest level. But I also really like my job, and I'm really passionate about the things that we get to do where I work. So in some ways, the two have kind of helped each other, right? My running makes me think a lot about the environment I'm in and the challenges that we face and why my job is important. And then my job also kind of gives me this flexibility to pursue something that's so important in my life. I mean, I don't know many companies that would say okay to their employee going off the grid for 10 weeks to train for a race. So yeah, I feel really lucky in the support that I have to be able to make it work.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. I think you nailed the some of the contradictions and mixed feelings of this pandemic. I could certainly relate to what you're saying. And actually, I I'm risking getting too much into the conversation, but I'll open it up to other questions soon. But you just touched on the advocacy side of things. We're obviously an activist organization that we love running, but we've come together to try and advocate for and protect the wild places. And there's a lot of beautiful wild places in Australia under threat, and we need to protect them, not just for our running, but for the future of our planet, at risk of sounding dramatic. But you made me think. I wanted to ask you, I know you've done advocacy work in the past. Has it mainly been in conjunction with your work, or yeah, I was just going to ask you, how have you been involved in advocacy? Are you involved in anything now? And is there anything happening in the area you're running in now, like campaigns or anything like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the first thing I'll say is that I'm always learning and I'm not perfect. And that's part of why I was so excited when you reached out to me, because this was an organization that's trying to do good things for the places that we run in. And I think there's a lot to be learned by the different things that people are doing around the US, around the world. So I'm excited to, get ideas from what you're doing to hopefully, do things differently where we are. But again, to answer your question, too many tangents, I'm sorry. But I think when I think back, to when was my first environmental thought, and I think when I was in high school, they were talking about developing the ridge that sits behind where my parents live. So it's this really beautiful ridge. It's referred to as the Gunks, which is really popular climbing spot. Like if you Google the Gunks, it'll come up as one of the premier climbing locations in the US. And they wanted to put housing developments on there. And I don't know, I was a freshman in high school and heard about this for the first time. I was like, what? No, that can't happen. And I just kind of remember diving into it. It was the first time I ever learned about anything that was happening in my neighborhood. And I mean, as a freshman in high school, you don't have a lot of autonomy or authority, but it was the first time that it was kind of open to my eyes that, oh yeah, people are interested in doing things to the places that you love, that don't necessarily protect those places. So that was kind of my first taste of what it meant to learn about something environmental. And then I think my first bit of advocacy was when I was in college. I went to a school that was in a location near the Marcellus Shale, which is this shale bed that was being fracked in the US. And it's so wild to me because when I went to school, I wanted to go into the fashion industry, and now I want to be as far away from the fashion industry as possible. But I think through the courses that I took, and I think that's what's so great about I went to a liberal arts college, and I really got exposed to a lot of different things. And one of those things was how the food we grow and eat affects the environment, and things like fracking. And so I took on this project kind of with the support of two unnamed faculty and staff members. They kind of let me be the face of it and organized a forum for our college. And that was really meaningful for me. I got some politicians. I had a professor from Cornell University who specialized in geology there. And it was really meant to be an informative session for my fellow students, for faculty at the school, to just open their eyes to what was happening in the area, to the potential environmental hazards, and to the lack of regulation. So that was a really meaningful experience, and really my first bit of advocacy work, and something that I would like to do more of. I think one thing that I've noticed is at different stages in my life, what I do to protect the environment or promote the protection of the environment has certainly changed. Now I feel like I'm not in so much of an advocacy position as a I work on this through my job. And that's the best that I can do right now. Well, it's probably not the best I can do because this is a crisis, right? But it's what I can do with the time that I have, and I can show up every day and I can know that what I'm doing is a piece of the puzzle. And I feel really motivated and really connected to what I do because of that. I did also really love, like with my coaching business, I developed this concept, which I called the environmental lab. I don't know if you saw that on my coaching site at all, but the idea was for the athletes that I was working with to have the same values, I mean, not necessarily the exact same values that I have, but to have values that align with the protection of the spaces that we run in. And part of that was doing things like we did a trash pickup day in our neighborhood, tried to get the mayor on board with like maybe having some other sort of trash pickup days, because there are some running places in our city that are really filthy. And it's like we barely made a dent in what we did. And then the other idea was for the athletes themselves to pick topics related to the environment that they were passionate about and write about what they were doing. Like I had one athlete who, she was actually a PhD student, and she was doing work on like environmental and land ethics. And so she had this like really unique thing that she could share with, you know, the other athletes in my group and then just our community as a whole. So unfortunately, with my transition to my job and the transition away from coaching, that also was the transition away from that environmental lab, but the concept is still there. And, you know, hopefully one day it's kind of, it comes back to life. But yeah, I think I'm always trying to do better. So I'm excited to learn, even just being out here in Arizona. The trail runners here seem to be way more involved in like trail work than where I am in New York. I think in New York, a lot of the trails are really established, and we kind of just like people take care of them. And sometimes they have trail work days and sometimes they don't. But out here, it's like every Thursday from 3 to 6 p.m., you can go and do trail work and you can just show up. And I'm like, wait, that's so cool. Like, why don't we have that where I am in New York? So I love that concept and hope that I can bring some of that back when I go home.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, I love the environment lab. That's to merge environmentalism with coaching and mentoring is super important. That's awesome. Look, it's about 35 past. I'm conscious that I've asked a lot of questions. Does anyone else have a message, a question for Michelle? Otherwise, I can just keep going.
Michelle, what's the power supply situation like where you live and work in the US, and what's the sort of move towards more greener power?
Yeah, great question. So I guess not speaking on behalf of my company. Plus, I haven't been working for 5 weeks, so my brain is maybe a little bit fuzzy on all of the specifics. No, I'm just kidding. So in New York, we actually have a lot of hydropower. So there's a good amount of hydro, and we do have some nuclear, although one fundamental change to New York's power supply over the past couple of years has been the retirement of a nuclear plant, which has primarily in the short run been replaced with gas-fired generation. So we have a lot of natural gas fired generation as well, some newer plants on that front. And then there are some other units in the city, like they call them peaker units, which are a bit older. And so some of those New York City units also, they have dual fuel capability. They run on natural gas and they run on oil. There is an increasing amount of wind generation and solar generation in New York State, and that has really been the push. There is a huge push for renewable generation in New York State. There are state legislature that's gone through to move towards being renewable. It is a long transition process that involves the building not just of more wind and solar. So right now, New York is initiatives for wind generation off of Long Island. But that's who knows how many years away. And then there's also some initiatives on the transmission side of things. So New York is kind of an interesting place in that our city center, New York City, that's where most of the power needs to go. And most of our renewable generation can happen in the northern and central and west parts of the state. So moving that renewable generation is part of the I don't want to call it the issue, but part of the challenge is we can build more wind turbines in the northern part of the state because that's where there's land and that's where the wind blows primarily, but we don't currently have the transmission to get that all downstate. So in addition to kind of the wind, offshore wind initiatives, there are also a lot of transmission initiatives. And there was one project in the western part of the state that was completed not too long before I took my time off, that was designed to help kind of clear some of those transmission pathways. There's another project that should have been completed while I was out. And there are a couple more on the horizon to try and bring more renewable generation from the northern parts of the state to the city centers and the load centers. So there's a lot of work being done. And I guess from the perspective of like, where am I involved or my organization? We carry a lot of the responsibility in designing the markets to be able to handle these types of generation changes. So we maintain the reliability of the grid. So we have to make sure that if we get rid of, so there are plans to get rid of some of the generation in New York City, these peaker units, which are dirtier units, we have to make sure that we're going to still be able to supply power to New York City and that there's not going to be blackouts, so that renewable energy is available or that there's some other alternative source of energy that is available to serve that load. It's really complex. And sometimes, some days it feels really good and you feel like you're on the path forward, and other days it feels really challenging. And you wonder when any of this will ever come to fruition and if it'll be in time or not. Yeah. Thanks for your question. And if I didn't answer something fully, let me know.
No, that was great. Actually, Shane's just got to duck out. Thanks heaps for coming, Shane.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. It's our transmission in the grid is a big challenge for us here too. Although, you know, Australia with our population, it's a very different challenge to the United States. But it's frustrating when I feel like the technology exists for us to do good things, but that's not necessarily the problem. The question of political will, I think, is something that people in both our countries are struggling with.
Yeah, some parts of the US are struggling with that. I mean, I feel lucky that I work in a state that is progressive and does want to move towards more renewable generation, and is pouring a lot of resources and a lot of money into doing that. There are certainly other parts of the US that are not so motivated to move in that direction. And yeah, it's when you have a large landscape, it's challenging. And yeah, when things are broken up, I mean, the way that it's managed, right? There's New York State, there's also the federal side of things. So New York State is a unique situation. It's a one state, what's referred to as an ISO, which is an independent system operator, which is the organization I work for. But there are other ISOs that are multi-state too. So, and that's like New England ISO, that's a multi-state ISO. Again, New England is also fairly progressive in wanting to move towards renewable energy and more sustainable sources. So, but yeah, it's not the case everywhere, right?
Yep.
Fortunately.
Yeah. Quarter two, if you don't mind, Michelle, I just wanted to turn back to Thailand. And Jonathan, feel free to jump in anytime. But I was just going to ask you, so for this 40K run, what's your strategy? How are you going to tackle it?
Oh, that's such a great question. I am trying to figure that out. Honestly, I think that I will be fairly conservative in the beginning. That it's
So can I say, what is the elevation gain?
Yeah, so it's 40K, and I want to be able to give you the meters because that might be more meaningful than me telling you not the meters. It's about 9,000 feet, which I think is around 2,500, 2,700 meters.
Yeah, that's
kind of about right.
A lot.
Yeah, and it pretty much comes in like two big climbs, and then there's like another smaller climb. So yeah, I hope to be pretty steady on the first climb, get through that first, like 10K, feeling pretty good, work that downhill a little bit, and then really focus on that second half of the race, being where I start to push a bit more. I don't like to go out and be in the front. I like to sit back a little bit and take my time to ease into things, and then hope to feel good. I have run races the other way where I push kind of from the beginning, take a couple of chances, be a little risky, but I don't think in a race where I've never seen the course, there's heat, there's humidity, and there's going to be people who I think probably go out really fast. I don't think that going out really fast is going to be my strategy. So I'm going to sit back and watch it play out first. Yeah.
Sounds wise. I don't know much about these World Championships. Are you the only, is there going to be a USA team in the event? And
yes.
And if yes, do you guys work together, or is it just like dog eat dog?
That is a good question. I actually don't know. I mean, I sort of know. So this is my first US team. So I don't have the familiarity of like, how much are we really working together? Because there is an individual component to the race too, right? So you can finish individually, but then your scores are combined to get, like, your times are added up together as a team. So the team that runs the fastest combined time, they score 3 of you. So there are 5 women on this team. 3 of us will score for the team, the 3 fastest. And then they rank all the teams against each other that way. So really the goal is to individually finish as fast as possible. Yeah, basically.
Cool.
Yeah.
And Thailand's a beautiful place. So you're going to be able to hang out and vacation a bit, or rest and recover, I guess, first.
Yes. So I'll be in Chiang Mai, which is where the race is. A couple of days before the race, they have like opening ceremonies and technical meetings and all sorts of things like that. So the team will be there kind of that week of the race. There are races. So there are 5 races happening. There's a junior race, there's a vertical K, there's a mountain race, there's the 40K, and there's the 80K. So a handful of different races. Some of those races are the day before the 40K. So I'll get to watch those. And then when the race is over, my husband and I are going to go from Chiang Mai to Phuket and spend some time on the beach, relaxing. I will be recovering. Yeah. He is getting ready to run a marathon, so he's going to be training still. And then we'll spend maybe a day or 2 in Bangkok before we fly back. So yeah, I will get to spend some time not running in that country. And I'm super excited. I've never been to Thailand or to Asia, and I've heard really wonderful things. You've said you've been there. So yeah, if you have any suggestions, let me know.
Oh, feel like we've potentially started so many other conversations here.
Yeah, that's true.
Chiang Mai's beautiful. I got a train up there. It was, it's just, I mean, it's all, you can't really go wrong. And I've spent very little time there, but it's stunning and the weather's beautiful and yeah, just
Awesome.
really interesting.
Okay.
And what's on the go? So obviously back to work when you get back home, and then what's on the agenda for 2023?
Yeah. First getting back to work, transitioning back to that life. I did give myself a week after I get back to New York to kind of readjust to the time change. And then, yeah, for 2023, I don't honestly have a totally clear picture of what I will do. My leading idea at the moment is that I will try to run the Black Canyon 100K, which is, I don't know if you've heard of it before, but it's 100K out here in the desert in Arizona, not too far from where I am, which is also part of the reason why I chose to be out here. I thought that I would go and preview the course. Turns out Flagstaff is just so amazing that I never left. But that 100K is one of the Western States golden ticket races.
Oh.
And yeah, so I believe first and second place, or up to fifth, depending on if people waive their golden ticket or not, will get to run Western States next year. And I would really love to run Western States. So I might try and do that. We'll see. I'm not sure yet.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Well, look, we're getting close to the hour, but Jonathan, you're all good? No questions? Thumbs
All
up.
good, mate. Yep. No.
Brilliant.
Thanks, guys. Great,
Yeah. Yeah, we usually start to wind up about here. I just wanted to give a quick plug so this is our 6th trail chat for Wild Places. And just a plug for anyone watching, check out For Wild Places at forwildplaces.com. You can actually join up as a member, and all of the membership income goes directly into For Wild Places to help us do what we do. And it's interesting, Michelle mentioned fracking, because our kind of flagship event is the Pilliga Ultra, where we organised an ultra event out in a state forest in New South Wales that's under threat from coal seam gas mining. But a particularly nasty form of coal seam gas mining is fracking. And we organised over $100,000 for local campaigns and legal services challenging a project that wants to put about 800 gas wells in this beautiful state forest area, which is the recharge area for the Great Artesian Basin, which is just such an important ecological, which is just so important to our environment. I feel like I went a bit off track there. I think I was doing a plug for Wild Places.
Yep.
Also, check Michelle out on Insta. It's just michellemerlis.com is the website. Yeah.
Yep, that's my website.
Yep.
And yeah, go ahead.
Yep. Insta, Strava. Keep in touch. Michelle, we'll be cheering for you in Thailand. Do you know if it's going to be like live cast? Did you know if we'll be able to follow the races?
Yeah, that's the question that everyone asks me. I do not know if they have local coverage, but what I will say is when my husband's coming here to Arizona tomorrow, and I told him one thing he has to figure out while he's here is how he's going to live stream from the event. Yeah. So he plans to set up a YouTube channel and he plans to live stream as much as he can. I don't know how much he'll be able to get of 40K, but so I will send you the link and it will be very amateur, but if I find of something that is less amateur, I will also send you that.
Oh, that's the best kind of the amateur YouTubers. That's great. We'll send out that link to members as well.
Awesome.
Michelle, is there anything else you'd like to plug or say?
Yeah, I just would like to say thank you for having me on. Honestly, there's not much more I like than talking about running, but to be able to talk about running and the importance of the places that we run in is extra special. So thank you for the work that you do and the work your organization is doing. Yeah, I hope that people will kind of join on, follow your organization, support your organization, and do some work themselves to make this place that we live in and we play in better tomorrow than it was today. So thank you.
Perfect. That's a quotable quote. We can put that up on the website. That's perfect.
Awesome.
Great. Well, Michelle, thank you so much. It's probably dinner time. We should let you go over there.
Thank you. Yes, first dinner time. So
Yes.
plenty of dinners. Yes, thank you so much.
Oh, really appreciate you taking the time. All the best in Thailand. And yeah, let's keep in touch.
Sounds great. Will do.
Great. All right. See you later.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.